Well, this is a different one. An old movie from the a 70-year-old movie was released in 1955, known as The Devil Girl from Mars. It is a science fiction film that, at the time, was actually considered to be a low budget movie. That it was okay, but didn't exactly go over big with the mainstream audience. Only people that, actually like sci-fi movies wanted to see it. So, or so I heard anyways. I wasn't around back then. Anyway, the main character is the titular Devil Girl, who somehow gets eighth bidding or billing in the period promotional materials, and I have no idea why. I do, however, remember that some movies would arrange billing based on order of appearance in the movie rather than, how important the characters were, which might explain it because she is definitely the last character here. Anyway, though, Naya is a Martian who has a variety of innate abilities and weapons that make her a very, very dangerous opponent. And quite frankly, certain of her abilities, we don't really know what they are or why she has them. Here is basically the entire cast. Technically, this isn't actually everyone, but close enough. The film starts with the scene of an airplane being destroyed, and then quickly skips to this pub where all of the human characters are ha- hanging out and talking about the fact that the airplane was destroyed. Because two of them are actually here to investigate the airplane's destruction. The rest of them live in the area. Well, I mean, and there's that guy who's an escaped prisoner, but he's an escaped prisoner who lived in the area before he got sent to prison. For, okay, the weird part is that he claims that the person who died, that he got sent to prison for killing, he didn't really kill them. And I don't remember the explanation behind that one. Why did this person die? How did he get, I don't know. To be quite honest, though, is that the backstories of several of the people here don't really matter. But that's mostly like the people that are just kind of living here. It's like you have the guy who's kind of sort of a reporter who went along with the scientist guy who was trying to find the location where the airplane went down. Okay. This is, of course, back before air crash investigations were, taken extra, extra seriously, maybe. Or just that the people who uh, made the film didn't really stop and think about whether air crash investigations would be a thing. I don't know. Anyway, though, the reason the plane crashed, though, is because Nia, while she was flying her alien spaceship, ran into it. Yeah. The people who were there trying to find the aircraft, I think Nia tells them this at some point, but um, it's not really a particularly big part of the plot. One of the things about this, though, is that it establishes just how little Nyack actually cares about humans. He's like, oh, yeah, that plane, it exploded. Because she didn't really, apparently, bother trying to avoid the thing. This is actually something that's kind of a recurring thing with her, and kind of defines her character, is that she is inconsiderate to a fault and pisses people off, not for the fun of it, but just as a matter of course. It's like, I'm better than you. Haha, screw you. It's just like her general demeanor. And thus she pisses people off even when she has reason to not piss people off, just because. Anyway, though, so the character of Naya has certain similarities to Ming the Merciless and Marvin the Martian. And yeah, I checked. Both of them actually do predate her. She was written in the 50s, and I'm not sure exactly what year they wrote the play version of this, because this was originally written as a play, then adapted into a film. Uh, but Marvin and Ming date back to either the 30s or 40s, both. I don't remember the exact year. Anyway, though, Ming has a similar sense of style, although he doesn't wear. If the promotional materials have the right color, dark green, although I don't know of any actual color photographs of the costumes, so whether the costume is actually dark green, black, or some other color, I genuinely am not sure. But the promotional posters for the movie make it seem like her costume is dark green. Which, hey, that's kind of similar to what Marvin the Martian wears, actually. Anyway, though, like Marvin, she's a space invader who doesn't bring an army. Or, well, okay, Marvin technically has those instant Martian things, but mm, he only uses them as a last resort because they're some of the dumbest supervillain minions anyone has ever seen in any science fiction, if you can call Looney Tunes science fiction, because they're there to be humorously dumb, and they literally act like mindless animals, honestly. Marvin can actually tell them to do things, and they will do what he tells them to do. It's just that they're too stupid to actually think about what they're doing. Anyway, though, I don't really consider them an army, just peons. Marvin does actually have a sidekick, which is a dog, and his dog does, in the Looney Tunes way, act as like a proper helper. But, okay, other things in Martian is that it has the whole, like, green skirt thing, which this actually one of the things that's notable is that if you look closely, it's actually a skirt that has splits in it because it's supposed to be like layers of strips of material and not an actual solid skirt. I'm genuinely not sure exactly how far they go because it's only scenes when she has her leg at an angle where you can actually see it. I honestly suspect that it's really just in a few strategic locations so that it doesn't stretch when she moves. But I'm hard to be sure whether also this aesthetic choice in universe might actually be intended to be like full splits going all the way up, and they just don't actually have the costume set up that way. Not sure. Anyway, though. This particular device here is actually a remote control for her. Well, it is kind of like a Star Wars droid, honestly, except a very large one. It has a robot sidekick that um, is dumb, but extremely powerful. Also, it's apparently her mechanic to fix her ship because she doesn't actually seem to know how to fix the ship herself. And her explanations she gives to the various people whenever they ask questions about how her ship works are seemingly insane. It's one of those things where you ask someone technical questions about a subject that they don't actually understand. They try to give you their answers. They might actually be genuinely attempting to give you the answers correctly. They don't actually understand the topic, so the answers they give you make no sense. But that's kind of sort of the way her answers about how her ship works come across. Whether or not this is intentional, I'm genuinely not sure. But the characters in this story actually comment on how her explanations of how her ship works are something that they don't understand. Is it just that Martian technology is that different from Earth technology? That Martian technology doesn't make sense to humans? Maybe. I mean, obviously, Martian technology is quite different from Earth technology. Or it just could be she's explaining things wrong. Anyway, though, Ming also has that whole like affable bad guy thing where he's happy to tell you about how he's going to conquer your planet and enslave your people. Also, Ming the Merciless is actually one of the few characters in science fiction I could find a reference for that has the same style of headgear. Oh yeah, the arching eyebrows thing, kind of like that too. Yeah. Anyways, though, so characters possibly inspired by her, Darth Vader apparently. So some people think that is because Darth Vader didn't come around until several years later, and one of the main things that a lot of people found interesting about Darth Vader as a character is actually something Naya does too. It's this aura of seeming invincibility. Now, Darth Vader is a much less talkative character. He doesn't do things like being like, "Oh, see, here's my giant robot that can vaporize cars," because yeah, her robot can vaporize cars. But both characters, when the heroes attack them, are like, "Ha ha, loser," and basically just shrug it off as if it's of no real importance. And it's like, what did you think was going to happen? Oh, you thought I was going to die? No, that's not how this works. That sort of like calm, uh, collected demeanor in the face of someone genuinely trying to kill you. They fail, you laugh at them, and then, you're like, oh, okay, so what were we doing before you tried to kill me? And don't even bother to retaliate. Now, Naya, like Marvin the Martian, has as her preferred weapon this pistol, which, yeah, it disintegrates people. She doesn't actually use it more than once, though. Most of the disintegrations in the movie are actually her robot zapping random objects. Her robot doesn't actually zap people, although one of the random objects, the only reason people didn't get disintegrated was they moved out of the way. So, the robot's, I guess, accuracy against moving targets might not be particularly good. Then again, the robot wasn't actually aiming at the people, so we don't really know for sure. Either way, though, Naya claimed that the ship was made out of an alloy that could self regenerate. That might actually be part of the reason why she's just waiting around so long. Is that her ship is actually just like self repairing, and she's just waiting for that process to get done, which takes several hours. So Naya just hangs out and annoys the local humans while she waits for her ship to get done. And she generally comes across as someone who is bored and interacting with the humans more out of boredom than any sort of necessity. Which, of course, comes with the whole like affable bad guy thing where the bad guy is happy to talk to you about things. And one of the things that Naya talks about that is very important to the plot is Mars, because of the fact that the humans in the story have no information about Mars other than what Naya gives them. And it's not entirely certain exactly what aspects of Martian technology and culture related by Naya are actually factually correct. We just know what Naya says about it, and there's nothing in the thing to directly check any of them. Like one, Naya claims that this rounded object here is actually a nuclear reactor that has uses a self-replicating energy source, so that the Martians had somehow discovered something that not only creates nuclear energy, but replicates itself as it does so. Thus, the reactor on board this ship is actually capable of not only providing enough energy to go from Mars to Earth, but from Mars to practically anywhere in the universe. Although what Naya leaves out when she's doing that explanation is the fact that it does not apparently actually make the ship move faster when going to someplace far away. There is actually no discussion of how quickly her ship flies at all. So we don't really know exactly what the trip time from Mars to Earth in this thing is. Again, they don't really explain a whole lot about Martian technology. But if you're doing it as a TTRPG, that is something that you have a lot of room to play with. Because, it's 50s schlock sci-fi. They don't really firmly explain anything. But as a game master, that gives you plenty of room to just make crap up. Because even in the movie, there's very, very little that's actually like concrete. The aesthetics of this are actually interesting because of the fact that you have this weirdly designed robot, which honestly does remind me of certain specific kinds of robots that you would see in the old sci-fi that are explicitly designed to be non-humanoid, like R2D2, except bigger, or that stuff from the Jetsons. Same general concept and era of science fiction. Oh yeah, another one that people do is like Lost in Space and Robbie the Robot. Other examples exist, a lot of them. Those are just a few that come to mind. But other things about this robot. The dome on the head is actually what it projects the death ray from. So this isn't necessarily actually like a head equivalent. It could just be a weapon mounting. It could be that these bubbles on the front are actually its eyes or whatever the robot uses instead of eyes. That part's not explained at all. Like, what does it have pincher claws for? We don't know. some of the promo materials for the robot actually make it seem like that the pincher claws have some sort of destructive energy beam or something, or maybe that's just an accident in how they uh composited the piece, and that's not really how it's meant to be uh portrayed. Because quite frankly, in the promo stuff, the robot mostly just stands there menacingly, and you don't really have a good idea as to what it's doing. Anyway, this is the one scene where Naya fires her pistol. The only one. Here we have. Oh yeah, we don't actually get to see what happens when Naya fires the pistol. But when the robot is destroying things, we do actually get to see the robot disintegrate stuff. And here we have a random vehicle being disintegrated. Basically just makes everything turn this like really, really bright white. And then poof, dust. Very standard sci-fi thing, at least for later works. I don't remember seeing this in things earlier than this movie, but I didn't really watch that much 40s era and 50s era sci-fi. The Flash Gordon TV series, of course, is an exception, but yeah, whatever. All right, so the interesting thing here, though, is that, like I mentioned earlier, because Naya is acting incredibly bored and just talking to humans because she literally has nothing better to do with her time. Yeah, she shows them the robot and gives them an explanation of just how terrifying the robot is. We The promo pictures that they did for the movie theaters as things to show people what the movie was about before they actually, paid to see it. These ad pieces are very interesting because in many ways they feel like they're concept art and not anything actually depicting the movie. See, because like on the left, we obviously have a picture of Naya in both of these posters. This isn't the same costume she actually wears in the movie, though. This feels like maybe someone gave a verbal description of the character to the artist, and then the artist drew uh, the character. Because if you look closely at some of the shots, she does actually have a belt that's a bunch that has the round buttons on it. It's just that the belt is all the way up here and not down here. Because her skirt is actually like covering like half of her lower torso and not actually starting at the waist. That's actually a fashion thing that was popular back in the 50s for some reason. Don't know why. Anyway, the interesting thing here, though, is that you see a fleet of Martian ships attacking a city. That is something that doesn't happen in the movie because it's a single inn out in the middle of the Scottish countryside where she annoys the humans and not attacking anything because her ship isn't actually able to do the attacking part. Another thing that's notable here is that while the aesthetics of their robot are similar enough that I think someone did actually give a verbal description of it, the actual shape isn't exactly the same. Notably, the lower part of it has a completely different design. The idea of it being as this big, bulky robot with a dome shape on top of it and uh, weird segmented pincer arms, yeah, they absolutely got that. Segmented legs, too. Sure, wrong shape of leg. Whatever. The thing with this, though, that really caught my attention is that because of the fact that this was done by the same people who wrote the script, presumably, or at least people that were very, very closely associated with it. It feels kind of sort of like something that is like, this is what would happen if the Martians in this fictional setting did actually invade Earth and didn't just have Naya annoying people. And here we have a few things that are also highly notable for what they are. You may have noticed that these are black and white. That's because the movie was filmed in black and white. It wasn't filmed in color. All color versions of this movie were colorized with probably digital techniques, and no stills or anything like that, to my knowledge, exist of the actual sets that were filmed in color, which means that these promotional materials were. I'm genuinely not sure if they took an actual still of the movie and painted over it, or if they just used a still as a reference photo and painted a duplicate of the scene in color. At any rate, these shots are notable because the fact that they do in fact depict the various characters of the film in color, the scenes in color, and are at least semi-consistent on it. I say semi-consistent because the exact shades that they're colored in with vary quite a lot. This is something that's very interesting because it shows the inside of the ship. And oh, also, if you look at the border on this, while at first glance it's like, oh, it's the same thing from the other shot. Not exactly the same. Like the robot design is the same. The Naya design is the same. The burning city is similar, but this one actually shows the flying saucer firing an energy beam out of the thing on the bottom. One of the things we don't really understand about Martian technology is that Naya does actually explicitly state that her ship has weapons capable of destroying buildings. Is she actually talking about a disintegration beam or something else? Yeah, we don't know that. But the promotional pictures actually show something else. See, it's like this one here shows what looks like a flamethrower incinerating the inn that most of the action takes place in. Oh yeah, also Naya actually explicitly states that she's planning to destroy the inn and kill everyone because, again, she's an affable bad guy who has no compunction against telling people what she's planning to do to them. Like, yeah, I'm going to kill you all later, but I'm bored, so I'm going to talk to you now instead of killing you now. Yeah, this guy here is the one who talks to her like, hey, I'm going to try to um, talk you into doing things my way. Yeah, that doesn't work. Why? Because he tries to double cross Naya, and then Naya uses her mind control thingy on him. Oh yeah, that's something I hadn't mentioned before. Superpowers. Okay, I did mention that she does have superpowers, but one thing that she regularly does in the movie is mind controlling people. There are several points in the movie where people just like stop acting normal around her, which kind of fits into the "I'm better than you" sort of thing. Is that humans don't really seem to have a defense against it. There's one scene where a guy's like, haha, that trick won't work on me. And then she mind controls him so hard that he goes and sits in a dark room and starts muttering about, that's an interesting point I hadn't considered, is that what he's muttering about really sounds more like Naya's ramblings than anything he would have actually been thinking. So the fact that he's muttering about how time is short and blah blah blah, that might actually be Naya's thoughts, not his own. Because Naya does act rather impatient, so if she actually has a short timetable for whatever the heck she's doing, that would actually explain her impatient behavior. Because she goes back and forth between her ship and the inn as if almost like someone who is like pacing around in a room. Anyway, interesting colorizations. I'm genuinely not sure exactly how these colorizations were done because there's certain key details that seem to have been left out. But overall, it's very interesting to see what the people who made the movie would have made it look like if they could have shot the movie in color. Because being a super low budget movie, that was actually the reason they didn't shoot it in colors. That the black and white film in the time period was simply less expensive, and thus producing a film in black and white was the cheap option. And a lot of people didn't bother for the expensive film because their movie's shooting budget didn't allow for it. Oh yeah, that's another fun thing. Apparently, they only had enough wardrobe budget to make one costume for Naya, so they took great pains to avoid accidentally damaging it. Which, given that the movie was allegedly shot, at least for the principal photography stage of the production, principal photography apparently took place in a matter of weeks, which is pretty impressive for a movie that has over an hour runtime and multiple scenes. They wrote the script, performed the script as a play, adapted the script to a movie, and then so on. Anyway, though, back to looking at how it works in the TTRPG setting. Martians, particularly the mind control ability, we don't actually know if the whole like immune to bullets thing is actually because of uh, a Martian superpower or because she's wearing some sort of Martian body armor. However, she basically tells the guy who shot at her, like, oh, that's a quaint toy, before taking it away from him. He then acts kind of stunned and like he's been like hypnotized by her powers, and we don't really get any explanation of exactly why that is. Because that's actually one of the things that's notable is that usually when people get hypnotized by her powers, the number one sign of it is that they stop being talkative. They stop talking. They just like stand there and stare off into space. The one exception being the guy who got the weird super whammy and that took several minutes to wear off after he was out of her sight range. That was bizarre. It didn't work the same as any other time she ever used it, but she was intentionally like really, really, really using it on him as hard as she could, seemingly. Oh yeah, that's the other thing is that we do have one fundamental limitation of her mind control ability. It is not permanent. It will wear off. It might wear off in a matter of seconds, or it might wear off like an hour or two, but it will wear off. So, any humans affected by Martian mind control, you just, tie them up or something, and then it'll eventually get wear off. Also, humans that are being affected by Martian mind control are seemingly incapable of acting normally. Often it'll just be like awkward and stiff, where they're like acting like they're like half asleep and barely able to think about what they're doing, or closer to fully asleep. Because the one time she used it on one of the female characters, possibly we actually have no idea why the female character in this particular scene was staring off into space unresponsive, but she was staring off into space completely unresponsive. One of the, one of the male characters like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she just like ignores him. Why? I don't know. Because Naya hadn't even shown up in the inn at that point. It could be that she like looked at Naya out the window, and then Naya does the mind whammy on her just for the fun of it. That would actually be in character for Naya. It's one of those like callous bad guys who like treats the humans like toys just because she can. Anyway, though, in this particular scene, we have her using her remote control to tell her robot what to do. One of the things that's notable about this is that the original scene, you can easily tell that the actual background here is a matte painting. This artificially colorized version of it, it's far less noticeable that it's a matte painting in the background because, quite frankly, the whole thing looks like a matte painting. Also, whoever did this changed the way her remote control device works because the remote control device is supposed to have three antennas sticking out of the end of it instead of just one. Notable, but not really important, honestly. It is interesting that the remote control device is mostly yellow. And here we have the robot. As seen in the promotional materials, it's kind of sort of like a light gray, bluish gray color. Also notable here is that the ship is apparently painted wrong. This is actually part of the reason why I think that these are actually not retouched stills and are actually um, paintings, or they retouched it so hard that they covered up the original. Because if you compare this to shots of the actual ship, there would be a round pipe here and a section of hull plate here. Let's see here. Oh yeah, it's like the actual photos I have. This is actually a completely different shot of ship, and I'm not sure exactly what makes this shot different because it's possible that some of the scenes you see of the ship in the background are a matte painting and not a physical prop, and it's possible this here is actually a physical prop and not a matte painting, or vice versa. I'm really not sure which, but I'm guessing the larger one is probably the matte painting. Oh yeah, it's all the way at the beginning. Dang it. Here, see, you can see here. It's like this is the way the ship actually looks in most of the movie. It's that you see the door here. You have these round thingies sticking out of it. We don't know what the round thingies are for. It's actually never actually shown doing anything in the movie at all. However, that is actually a consistent detail that you see in all of these promo shots. It's like these are the four landing struts that the ship extends, and these are actually shown to extend and retract as part of the landing sequence in the movie, which is apparently like the one scene in the movie that they had to do multiple takes of to get it to work right. And when it's landing, you see a jet of flame coming out of it. Although this thing here is a spinning ring. even in the promotional shots where it's not actually, like a photograph of it, they actually draw it to look like a spinning ring. Interesting detail. So it's like this is a colorized version of it sitting on the ground. And so like this is what I was talking about here. It's like when you look at that one shot, it stops here and then it stops here and that's and then it just like leaves off this part of the ship for some reason. Don't know why. Very strange. Oh yeah, the green version of the saucer here. This is from a DVD release that was presumably um, colorized for the DVD release because these appear to be um, stills used as clip art to make a cover image. And also, one of the things that's interesting here is that Hazel Court and Hugh McDermott, I guess are these two. Even in the DVD version, they did not list her name on the cover. I don't get it. Patricia Laffett is the main character of the movie. Why? Why does she get bottom billing? I don't get. Doesn't make sense to me. Although, to be fair, these two are possibly the most important human characters in the film. I say possibly because they're definitely not the only ones that are important to the plot. Oh, this is another interesting thing because like it's the only time in the promo thing we actually see the robot doing something. All the other ones where we see the robot, it just stands there menacingly. And this is kind of sort of like, like you have the dome on top of it light up and it fires a disintegration ray. When you actually see this shot in the movie, it's not a beam or a stream of energy. It's just a discharge. Fires like a ball of light at the target. And then when the ball of light hits the target goes woof. It's also interesting that the typography for the posters tends to vary a lot, but it's always very blocky. Although I suspect that was actually just like an art choice because it was popular for the time. Anyway, though, yes, like the concept of the way Martian tech. Oh, almost forgot something. Martian history. Why is she on Earth? She's on Earth because Mars had a civil war recently, relatively, anyways. And apparently, one of the side effects of the Civil War is that most or all of the male Martians are dead, and now Mars needs men to help repopulate the planet. This is something that's actually very interesting because at one point in time, um, she accidentally tells the humans that her ship is the only one like it, or was when she left Mars. And that suggests that this is an experimental prototype craft, and that would also explain why she doesn't know how to actually repair the thing. She knows how to fly it, but she doesn't actually know how to repair it, and she's waiting around for either her robot to finish repairing it or for the ship to finish repairing itself because she claims that the metal parts of the ship are actually capable of doing some sort of self-replication thing to heal. She actually calls it like an organic alloy. Doesn't bother explaining how the organic alloy knows what shape to form itself into, though. But hey, it's a pop sci-fi movie from the 50s. They didn't usually explain such things. So whatever makes her immune to bullets, because quite frankly, a guy completely emptied a bullet at her. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Is like the R of invincibility thing is the fact that she no sells anything someone does to try to attack her. Like, so someone yanks something out of her hands. She just uses the mind control whammy to force him to give it back, and does it, you know, react in any other way. It's like, give that back. Yeah. Someone shoots at her. She doesn't flinch. She just like calmly takes the gun out of his hands. Very, very ominous way of writing the character, presenting it, because you know when you're the DM, uh, telling players what the bad guys are doing, how you phrase your descriptions of the bad guys is very important to the way the players receive them and understand them, or just imagine them in their heads. It's like if it's a bad guy who just like walks around being like, "Ha ha, screw you, losers," and you effectively communicate that, it redefines how the players see the bad guy. And in her case, well, she's highly talkative. That seems to be largely out of boredom, and thus the what she says to people is just like completely off the wall nutso. So, because one thing that you'll see a lot in commentary that this movie is that the way she's dressed and the basic goals she has of acquiring men to help repopulate Mars. Um, if she was nice about it, she probably wouldn't have a whole lot of difficulty finding volunteers. She wouldn't need to go to the whole like threatening people and um, attempting to force people to do it angle. She could just, like ask nicely and people would do it just because. And it's her personality that causes her not to do that. She treats humans as creatures that are beneath her rather than, people. And that's a very interesting thing with this, though, is that like it suggests that maybe possibly the war on Mars was because the Martians were treating each other that way, which is an interesting backstory thing that is hinted at in tantalizing ways in the movie, and that as someone who's actually writing this for a TTRPG, you would have to extrapolate a bit. It's like a war fought by a civilization that uses disintegration rays as standard issue hardware. Yeah, casualties in a war like that would be insane, especially if those disintegration rays were able to destroy entire buildings. That would be nuts. And that would also neatly explain how such a large segment of the Martian population ended up dead at the end of the war. The victors, if you can call them that, literally wiped out their enemies, killed them all, and realized, oh, wait, we needed to save some of them for slave labor. And, now they have to go find slave labor on a different planet. Yeah. Also brings in the question, just how many Martians are left after a war like that? Because they only sent one ship to Earth. Naya suggested that they only had one ship at the time she left Mars, and that they were working on building more. That is doesn't say a lot about Martian society, but what it does say about the Martians is that Martians are, well, okay, the main goal here is that they need to repopulate Mars. So Martians are definitely not in a good place long term as a race, but it also brings into question how good of a shape they are short term if they only actually had the ability to build the one ship to get to Earth. Like, is it a dying civilization as is? How much of their infrastructure is actually left after the war? Did they use these rays to incinerate entire cities of Martians? Maybe. And that's something that would be an interesting thing to explore. Just because that was actually one of those things that you would see in like older fiction, like War of the Worlds, like, like massive uh, conflicts on a cosmic scale where cities get destroyed and blah, blah, blah. Well, also another thing that was a popular fiction from back in the day had Mars as a dead planet because of the fact that the people of Mars had fought each other so hard that after they were done fighting each other, there just wasn't anyone left to keep fighting. How many Martians are actually in whichever faction that Nye is part of? Is it even the only faction of Martians left? That's an interesting idea to ponder. Because, in some ways, Naya does the unreliable narrator trope. We have to take her word for it because we can't verify what she says. But what she says, well, we don't have any reason to actually believe her, other than her being the only source of information. Does she actually know the status of, everyone living on Mars? Perhaps not. It's possible that she was, given the official story from whoever her faction leader is. And, you know, that's just the line of stuff for to, keep up the morale of the troops because we don't want the troops to know that the war was so devastating that we're all going to die soon. But, the story has certain very salient details in it, things that define a setting. But they're big brushstrokes. They're not a full painting. We know Mars is a planet where the civilization is broken and demolished. We don't know exactly what status it currently exists in. Naya comes to Earth and acts as a complete jerk. But in the end, we don't really know how much of this is Naya's uh, individual personality and how much of it is a reflection of Martians in general. It could be like in some science fiction where there's, what are, by human standards, good Martians and bad Martians, and that it's the good Martians who fought a war with the bad Martians. Although Naya claims that the division in the Civil War was men versus women, which strange considering having a planet-wide civil war uh, fought along that line. But if the whole like mind controlling people thing is something the Martians were doing to each other, and it was the male Martians being mind controlled by the female Martians on a regular basis, makes you wonder. But anyways, I guess that's enough about this. There's only so much material to ponder here, and while there's a lot of pondering you could do, most of that pondering would be extrapolation because while we have interesting, tantalizing food for thought, there's not a whole lot of concrete anything here. And I guess I'll leave it there. As a setting, oh, right, of the various games that I have played, the one that I feel like would fit best would probably be Call of Cthulhu because this is a thing where you would want to avoid combat because let's face it, when Martian weapons vaporize people, one shot kill as a general game mechanic seems like a reason to, avoid combat. Unless you have some sort of trick for avoiding that. Because that is actually something that's a point in a lot of science fiction, like pop sci-fi, is that the people who create weapons also figure out how to prevent them, and it's possible that the weird black bodysuit that Naya is wearing is actually anti-disintegration ray armor. We don't actually know that though. She never actually mentioned anything as being immune to the disintegration ray effect. But then again, she's not really telling the humans how it works. She's trying to intimidate them. But anyway, uh, oh yeah, and a low budget sci-fi movie from 70 years ago gets 2.5 stars on Rotten Tomatoes. That says a lot about how well written it actually was and how well acted. To be fair, because Patricia Laffin's role as Naya is really what makes the film. She plays the character in a campy yet serious way that at no point do you take Naya lightly. But at the same time, you're like, haha, no one would do that in real life. But then again, in real life, no one's met Martians, so, Alrighty then. Well, I guess I'll call it there. So much you could do speculating, but in the end, eh, if you were playing this as a TTRPG, it would be up to you to decide the exact specifics of how you want to portray it. There's multiple different angles you could go with certain of the things, like how much of the tech does Naya use is actually like standard Martian equipment and how much isn't. Because quite frankly, as was mentioned, actually at one point Naya claims that the power source on her ship could destroy the Earth. But there's a caveat to that. When the ship explodes, that's not actually a particularly large explosion. It's possible that what Naya meant when she said that the power source could destroy the Earth is um, over time. That is, the power source, if being continually depleted and used for energy attacks, would eventually, destroy the Earth by disintegrating it a piece at a time. But not all at once, and not in one day. Uh, maybe, possibly. Hard to say. Because there is the other option of like having the plot device of destroying the power source prevents it from self-replicating and thus nullifies what made it, dangerous. Thus, the explosion that destroyed the Martian ship might actually have prevented it from, going nuclear, as the saying goes. Because that's totally a thing that happens with actual nuclear weapons. Blow it up, and sometimes it just doesn't have a nuclear detonation. Oh well. That's been long. Very interesting thing to ponder, even if it's not something that actually gives you a whole lot of meat to ponder. Oh well, time to go.